When you have two images that you are working in Lightroom and then you want to merge them together, what you'll want to do is to open those images from Lightroom. And the benefit of this will be that you can automatically add the new, what will ultimately be a Photoshop file or a TIFF file to your Lightroom catalog and be able to kind of keep all of your stuff organized. So in this particular example, I'm taking the eyeballs open image and I'm going to be merging it with the eyeballs closed image. And what I'll want to do is select both, and to select multiple things, you hold down the Shift key. And then I will hit Control on the keyboard and click, and it gives me the option here to go to Edit In. And normally when you just want to work on one image, you would say Edit in Photoshop. But in this case, what we actually want to do is we want to open as layers in Photoshop. And this is really helpful because it would automatically create a single document in Photoshop with both of those images in it. So that's what I'm going to do there. And then it'll take a second because it has to open up Photoshop and think about that. Once I'm open in Photoshop, I'll of course want to expand my window here. And the tool that you really need, the kind of window over here that you really need, is the layers window. That's going to be the most important. So I'm actually going to go ahead and only open up the layers panel. So what I did was, I guess I did that kind of fast, but I hid the other menus with those little arrows, and then I just open up the layers panel. And you can kind of pull this up and put it wherever you want, and you can even expand it and make it larger, which might be really helpful. Now, one of the things that you'll see in the layers panel is that I have two images here, and basically it's image number 9 and image 10. And one of them is on top, and the one that's on top is the one that's visible right now. It's the one with the eyes open. And I can confirm that with the eyeballs here, which hide your layers. So the eyeballs let you see or hide any layer, no matter what kind of layer that is. And in this particular image, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be taking these eyeballs and we're going to use the open ones to put onto the one where the closed eyes are in the picture. And so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to switch the order. I'm going to put the closed eyes on top so that that is the most visible image of the two. So in order to do that, you drag and drop the layers in one order or the other. And the top one is going to be the most visible. Now, when you're working on something like this, where I'm merging two images together, in this particular example, I really need the two images to be aligned really closely, and I think they're pretty close, but I'm not totally sure how close they are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the opacity of my top layer so that I can kind of see them both simultaneously. And I'm going to take my zoom in here and I'm going to look closer, and I can see that Logan's head kind of shifted a little bit. So what I need to do is I kind of need to move one of the images over. Now the image I'm going to actually move over is the one that's on the underneath, because the top one I want to be the most visible, so I don't want the stool in that one or the background in that one to shift. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I select the bottom image. I'm going to make sure that I select my Move tool, which is the top tool here on the panels on the left. And then I will, the best way to do this one in particular, oops, I'm going the wrong way, is to probably line up something like his nose, oops, now I'm going way too far, and just using actually my arrow keys on my keyboard if I don't need to move it very far. So I'm just going to make sure that I get the face aligned as closely as possible, and then I can always kind of tweak this later. Then I'll want to make sure to bring my opacity up, And then the next step in this is to create a layer mask. To create a layer mask, it's this icon right here at the bottom of the layers panel. And you can add a layer mask to any layer at this stage, but I want to add it to the one on the top, because what I actually want to do is I want to make sure that I mask where his eyes are closed. Now when I click to add that layer mask, what you'll see pop up is there was the little icon of the image already, and then linked to that is the white rectangle. And the white rectangle indicates a layer mask where nothing has been masked yet. So when it's white, it means that everything of that image is revealed. What I will then want to do is I'll want to make sure that I select my brush tool, and I can do that by selecting the brush tool over here on the left hand side, or I can use the keyboard shortcut B, which will get me to that same tool. You want to make sure not to select this one that also looks like the brush called the history brush tool. We won't be using that. We want to make sure that we're using the B brush tool. And then we will want to make sure that we have black selected as our dominant color. So here is the two color options that we have, black and white. If you have something there that's not black or white, you can click on this little icon to get you back to black and white. And if your white is on top, you can use the arrow keys to make the black on top, which would be your active color. And to do that at a keyboard shortcut, it's X that you can switch back and forth. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to make, obviously this brush is way too big, so I'm going to make my brush smaller with the keyboard shortcut, the bracket keys, or you can use your kind of tool up here to select size as well. And I'm going to open up the eyes. Now you can kind of see that maybe they're not placed exactly where they should be right now, but the nice thing is that I can always kind of reconfigure and move my bottom layer around a little bit. And if I feel like I've gone too far here, like he kind of, the shadow of that other image kind of starts to make it look like he has a black eye, I can hit X again, and that will make the white dominant, and I can hide that layer mask like so. And then I can also, again, as I mentioned, go back to the move tool, and I can move that image and put it in its proper place and continue to kind of refine that as I go. Now, one of the things I want to show you is what happens if you have the wrong part of the layer selected and you try to use the brush tool to do what I just did. So if I do it now and I have my brush tool selected and I try to kind of mask something, it's going to start to paint black. And the reason for that is if you look over here, I currently have the image itself selected with that white outline and not the mask. And so if you find that that's happening, look over here on that panel and make sure that you don't have the wrong thing selected. Now, the thing that I can do if I've done this and I'm like, oh shoot, I need to go back. You have several options, but the quickest one, if you've just done something immediately by mistake, would be to go to Edit and Undo, which basically undoes your last change, or you can do Command Z on your keyboard, which will go back. And then what I would want to make sure then is I select the mask and I don't select the image itself when I'm trying to use the brush to hide or reveal certain aspects of my image. One of the things that we should be making sure that we're doing, of course, as we're working in Photoshop is we need to be saving our document. And what you'll see is that I'm currently working on a raw file. It says I'm working as a .cr2, and I actually haven't saved my file yet. So I'm going to hit Command S, which will save it. And what you will notice is that it now then becomes a file that ends in edit.tif. So it automatically saved this for me as a TIFF file. If it automatically saves it for you as a Photoshop file, which is .psd, that's totally fine. And this particular file type, both the TIFF and the PSD, will save your layers for you so that the next time you open up this image, you'll have access to both the original two photographs together and the mask that you've created. And then the nice thing is that if you've opened this from Lightroom, it will automatically include this new third file into your Lightroom catalog. Every time you're working in Photoshop, make sure to be saving frequently as you go so that you don't lose any of your information.